Hello and welcome to the Magic Mirror podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Khan, the Trinket Mage, and I'm back this week. Maybe you missed me, maybe you didn't. Who knows?
We missed you, Khan.
You're okay.
I'm glad. Speaking of these two voices that just spoke, I want to introduce my co-hosts, 33 Elk.
Hello.
And Salubrious Snail.
Hello there.
All right, we got a fun podcast this week. We're doing cards that we think players should play more, or just underrated cards. I feel like we could do this like every week, to be honest, but this is the first week. We don't have a theme for these, do we?
There isn't really a theme, no. We just all feel that these are kind of underplayed and respective archetypes or whatever. It's a little bit of a sister episode to the overplayed cards kind of episode that we had 2 episodes ago.
And then, other than that, the only other thing we got to talk about is questions. We'll be answering questions from you at the end of the podcast. Before we get into our main topic, we need to thank the sponsor, Card Castle. They're the easy way to sort your collection digitally. If you use our link in the description below to make an account, you'll get 1 free month of premium access. Thanks to Card Castle for sponsoring the podcast. Who wants to go first?
I love going first.
Okay, then go.
My first card that I have that I feel is very underplayed is Dance with Calamity. This is an 8 mana red sorcery that says shuffle your library. As many times as you choose, you may exile the top card of your library. If the total mana value of the cards exiled this way is 13 or less, you may cast any number of spells from among those cards without paying their mana cost. So it's blackjack. The second you go 14 or more mana value of cards exiled that are like flipped off the top of your deck, you can no longer cast any of them and they just remain exiled forever. So you can't get too greedy with it. I think this card's cracked. It's also fun.
You're definitely gonna have to sell me on that one. Like, what situations are you thinking
I think this card's
with
cracked.
it being good?
Yeah, so people see Cast from Exile and they automatically think, for good reason, Prosper. You're going to get a trigger for each of these cards that are exiled that you're casting. The second thing is Pia Nalar. Pia Nalar makes a Thopter whenever you cast a spell from exile, and there's a card called Inspiring Statuary that gives all of your artifacts, or all of your non-artifact spells improvise, so you can tap those Thopters for mana as well. With Dance with Calamity, right, that's a big cost reduction. Prosper makes treasures. That's a big, help for casting this big 8 mana thing, and then you get a huge rebate when you cast all the spells off of it. The only restriction for me with Dance with Calamity is that all of the cards in your deck are mana value 5 or less. Mana value 5 or less, I feel, is like the perfect way to kind of like feel it out. Because if you exile a 5-drop with it, and then you exile a 2-drop with it, you're like, okay, I can still hit a 5-drop here and be fine. And then you can keep going off of that knowledge. I think any deck that has a lot of regrowths in it, this card is insane because you can spin into regrowths and then you put all the spells on the stack. You can't regrowth it right away.
No, yeah, you can't regrowth it until the whole thing is resolved.
Yeah, you can try to target it with forks, but it won't work.
Yes.
I find in a deck with a lot of regrowth still, this card's actually insane. Decks with Eternal Witness and Timeless Witness, this card's insane because you can cast them. They're on the stack, they ETB, and then you can buy it back to your hand. I run into Roxanne for that exact reason, basically, is because when you spin into an Eternal Witness, you can get this back into your hand, and then Roxanne is just also, my Roxanne deck is just full of regrowth effects to just keep buying this back, and Roxanne makes a ton of mana. My curve there ends in 5. It's just huge card advantage. Mana is just not an object, which it isn't for the decks I've listed. Dance with Calamity is like an insane card advantage spell.
Interesting. When I think of Dance with Calamity, I actually think you play this in a deck that cheats mana values and plays a bunch of big things. I don't know, Quintorius Lore Master. He has a lot of text I'm not going to read, but he cheats the cost on instants and sorceries is the, long and short of it. So in decks like that, you go Dance with Calamity and then you flip like a 6-drop and another 6-drop and you call it there, and then you're like, 2 6 mana value spells. That's pretty big. That's where I imagine it. Or like the top end of a mono red storm build with like Urbrask or something. You just hit like multiple rituals and like do a big storm turn. That's where I usually see the card.
I mean, yeah, my Roxanne deck does play a bit like a storm deck, so I definitely see the storm line there. Like this off of like, oh man, like a huge Past in Flames turn. I see the vision there.
It seems fine. I think there are definitely some restrictions to where you'd want to play it. It's definitely great in decks that want to cast from exile. They have the payoffs for casting things from exile for sure. If you just get a big old chain of like, 3-4 spells off of it, 3-4 triggers, that's lovely, obviously. Seems not great that you can't really use it alongside reactive cards. Obviously, it's not great with like a counterspell or something else like that. But I guess for an 8 mana red card, that might not necessarily be the biggest restriction. There's still plenty of decks that will be happy with that.
I feel like I want to see more of this card because it is kind of funny to do the mini game of like, oh, I'm flipping cards and like, well, what if I get more than 13? And I just want to see more people do that.
Yeah, I have taken 20-minute turns with this before. This thing, I have looped it like 4 or 5 times in a single turn once.
It is one of those cards that you can go like crazy with in the right situation.
Dance with Calamity 1,000-Year Storm. You can play so much blackjack, guys.
People, you should play with this card because it's gambling, and we all know you love gambling. Be honest with yourself.
You want to give your first one, Stan?
Yeah, I am a fan of Charitable Levy, and I will not apologize for that. So Charitable Levy is a card where it is 1 and a white. It's an enchantment that makes non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, put a collection counter on it. Then if there are 3 or more collection counters on it, sacrifice it. If you do, draw a card. Then you may search your library for a plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. I am a big fan of tax effects in general. Obviously, this is a little bit different from Athalia in the sense that you're not going to play this and then have it stick around long term, have it slow down opponents long term, have it stop a board wipe most likely. But it's a great kind of speed bump to throw out there. And it is also white ramp that is not even catch up ramp. You can just throw this out there. Obviously, you can't necessarily predict when exactly you'll get the ramp from it unless you're fully triggering it yourself, which I probably wouldn't recommend, but I've seen it happen. But still, it's white ramp. You know, you're paying 2 mana for a card and a plains eventually. And I am a big fan of tax effects. So I think this card slaps.
So what I like about this card is that it is card advantage, right? This is one card that turns into a card and a plains. That being said, I don't like that it does the taxing and the ramp poorly. Like it does both effects bad, even though it does both, right? The tax doesn't last forever, and then you don't get the ramp guaranteed by the time you'd probably want it, which is in the next 1 or 2 turns.
Yeah, that's my problem, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I'm with you. I love stacks effects, tax effects, all that jazz. If this was just a white and 1, the first line of text, I would be all over this card. The problem I have with this is like, all right, if I'm playing this on turn 2, let's just imagine, right? I play this on turn 2. When am I getting this play? Like it's going to be a while. And at that point, is it like how much of it is like ramp?
Yeah, I don't think it's too hard to see a world where one of your opponents goes like, I play creature, and then your other 2 maybe drop a 2 mana rock for 3, and then you untap, and then you're being taxed, so you pay 1 extra into it to get the plains and the card back. But then at that point, you're paying 3 mana for this card.
Yeah, isn't that kind of weird or awkward? I haven't played the card, so let me know if I'm wrong here, Stan.
There's some awkward play patterns with it. I mean, the one deck I've played it in is it's like a Hate Bears deck that runs like, 50 creatures or something. And obviously there, it almost never triggers on myself. So I'm generally happy with it in that sense. Sometimes it does take a while. I think it's important to think about what a turn 2 effect like this really does, because the long-term benefit of having Thalia type effect on board is certainly a plus, but the biggest impact I feel is often in the first couple turns anyway. The fact that your opponent can't play the turn 2 rock on turn 2, even if they don't end up paying the cost, they've still kind of paid the cost. It's a little speed bump that they've been kind of slowed down by. I will admit that the ramp is obviously very kind of unpredictable in terms of when it hits. But the fact that you can just include a little speed bump card like this that will guarantee a replacement of itself eventually is nice. And you can also grab a non-basic plains with it, which can be nice if you grab like a surveil land or something.
Ooh, yeah, it is any plains. That I did miss.
Yeah, I like that it's not a basic plains. That is really nice.
If there was more like Savine's Reclamation style effects, I'd be kind of in on this. Just keep getting it back. We have like Sun-Blessed Healer from Foundations that can get a Mana Value 2 thing back. And then we have Savine's Reclamation, of course, which can get 3 or less back. Sun Titan starts to get a little expensive, though, for my taste. But like those first 2, where it's like 4 or less mana, like if we had more of those buyback effects, I'd be kind of in, actually. But as it stands, it is just a little bit too unpredictable for me anyway.
I'm trying to remember back to when I played Thalia as my commander for like a Hate Bears deck, like many years ago. And I just remember like most people would be like, okay, and then just play creatures and like attack me. And it didn't really do anything. So I'm worried that it's going to be similar here, but maybe, I don't know. That might have been a meta thing.
It heavily depends on the meta for sure. Yeah.
I'm very interested in what the comments have to say about Charitable Levy. Shall we move on to my first one?
Yeah, go wild.
All right. Everybody knows counterspell. Blue, counter any spell, right?
Yep.
But what if you could do that for 1 blue? Think about that. Abjure is 1 blue for an instant. Counter any spell. Counter target spell. But as an additional cost, you have to sacrifice a blue permanent. And This card is awesome in the right deck, but I think not enough people know about it.
Yuriko.
It is pretty good in Yuriko. So if you look up the card on like EDH Rec, right, you'll find people are playing it in Talrand and Min Wily Illusionist and Yuriko, these decks that like make blue permanents. But I feel like there's a lot more that don't. So like Alia, Artful Provocateur, who makes a 1/1 blue fairy every time you cast an artifact or enchantment, only 1.7% of decks are playing Abjure. That's like nothing. And if I go to Elminster is a planeswalker that can be your commander, and he makes 1/1 blue fairy dragons. And if I look at Abjure, there are literally 34 decks of the like 4,000 Elminster decks or whatever playing Abjure, which is crazy, especially because it's extra good with the Planeswalker. If he's on 1 loyalty, you can use Abjure to sacrifice him to recast him and like reset his loyalty as well. And he just makes dudes. It's so awesome. Yeah, I love Abjure.
Okay, I do like that Elminster use case, but Alalia, I don't think I agree with. Maybe it's a little tough to be like, okay, here's a 1 blue counterspell. It counters anything, but you need to have already played your commander and also an artifact or enchantment, and you need to keep a fairy in play. Like all of that needs to go right before Abjure turns on in Alayla.
But in casual EDH, when do you need the counterspell?
I do like Abjure in Yuriko. I like it in other decks like Talrand, where it's like you get an immediate replacement. It's basically Fierce Guardianship, kinda. More like deflecting, not deflecting spots, sorry. More like Bolt Bend, where it's like 1 red if your commander's out and your commander has 4 power or whatever. It's probably more apt, like a comparison. Layla, you've kind of lost me on.
It's that deck makes like a gajillion fairies a second.
Yeah, but
I think that's a really low bar to clear.
I mean, but I feel like the average permanent in that deck is going to be like an artifact of some sort. There are a lot of cases in which you won't have the permanent to sacrifice. I think Abjure is definitely decent, and it should probably be run in more decks, but I think the card definitely has a lot of awkwardness that definitely makes a 2-mana counterspell probably the better choice in a lot of decks as well.
Yeah, especially if we're talking casual commander, like it's just so much more easy to hold up 2 mana to counter something.
But that's why Abjure is so good in decks like that, because you don't need to cast a counterspell early. You can do it later when you have like a random 1/1 fairy lying around. That's why it's not good in CDH, because you actually would want the counterspell on turn 1 when you might not have a blue permanent you can set.
I don't know. It's definitely narrow use case. I don't know if I would put it in Alayla though. I like the Elminster use case a lot though. That
Elminster is sweet. That's a cool card. I love that commander. I should build an Elminster deck. Damn.
Elminster's funny.
You want to give your second card, Elk?
I'm going to talk here about Gleeful Arsonist. This card utterly owns. It is so good. It is 2 in a red for a 1/2 human wizard, and it says whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Gleeful Arsonist deals damage equal to its power to that player, and then she has Undying. This card is awesome. So I run it in Judith, where its ceiling is even higher, because Judith wants a non-token sacrificing to happen. Specifically Judith the Scourge Debuff. Secondly, I have Harmonic Prodigy in that deck because it doubles up Judith's pings, but it also doubles up the Gleeful Arsonist pings. Judith is also a power lord, so she gives +1/+0 to all your other creatures. So Gleeful Arsonist is a 3 power creature in that deck. So you're getting lightning bolted twice if the stars align and you get all 3 in play, but you only really need 1 of those going on for it to be actually pretty harmful. This all being said, Undying is just a good word to have on permanence because Yawgmoth exists. So you can sacrifice this to Yawgmoth and then sacrifice a different creature and put the -1/-1 counter onto the Gleeful Arsonist. And then like the fact that this is just Undying with more text on it is actually huge.
So I get it in like pinging focus decks, Obnixilis, Greason, Starn, or whatever, Torbrand, but like outside of like those like specific things, and what was the commander's name? Judith. And like Judith because it has Undying, which also works with other aristocrats things. When you say more people should be playing it, do you think there's not enough people playing it in those decks, or other decks could just play it?
This is unironically, I think, a banger in any aristocrats deck. Just having an Undying creature that actually has like significant rules text on it is pretty cool. That being said as well, you can proliferate the +1/+1 counter from Undying. You can go ham and make this thing huge and lock people out of casting non-creature spells completely. Or if they do, they're going to take like 6, 7 upwards worth of damage. I mean, White has been getting tons of proliferate, like Modern Horizons 3 gave us a ton of it.
Yeah, but at what point is it like you should just play Rurik Thar instead if that's the effect you want.
Well, Rurik Thar hits you.
Yeah, I think the one-sidedness of this is definitely relevant.
It is one-sided. That's fair.
At the same time, I think you would want to be careful to play it in a deck where you are having ways to buff the power or are consistently having like a sacrifice type thing to at least get it up to 2 power.
Yeah, I didn't even think about throwing equipment on this thing.
I don't know. I'm a Rug of Smothering enjoyer, so I definitely enjoy broadly that sort of a group slug type effect. Like the fact that it's one-sided is definitely meaningful. But you just definitely wouldn't want it sitting around on board with 1 power, only pinging people for 1, because that's not going to slow people down all that much.
I don't know. I'm not even a Rug of Smothering enjoyer in a lot of Hate Bears decks.
I kind of like Rug of Smothering a lot.
If you got like a combo focus meta, it's like fine. But I feel like outside of combo decks, it's a little slow on its damage.
It's not wildly strong. I just like it a lot.
I mean, I do like that it's a magic rug that like attacks you. It's funny. How does this compare to Magebane Lizard?
Magebane Lizard, that just does 4, right? Or it does 1, then 2, then 3, right?
Yeah.
The floor on Magebane Lizard is way lower than Gleeful Arsonist. Because if you have Gleeful Arsonist at 2 or 3, and they cast 3 spells, you're on par with Magebane Lizard. Anything less, and Gleeful Arsonist actually comes out ahead. How many times is someone going spell, 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 spell? Like, sure, that happens sometimes, but this comes down on turn 3. You can probably get it reasonably buffed up by turn 4. The average deck's only going to do 1 or 2 non-creature spells a turn. So this actually comes out ahead, in my opinion, in terms of like the Magebane Lizard comparison, at least against most decks.
That's my problem with cards like Gleeful Arsonist, is a lot of casual EDH decks are playing between 0 and 2 non-creature spells a turn. And then I'm just not impressed with how much damage it does.
I think once it does like 3 or so damage, I'm kind of happy with it. Just like pinging people. If I have the additional sack synergies, or, you know, you're proliferating the counters, or you're equipping it like and making it more huge, and you're getting 6, like a one-sided Rurik Thar sort of deal, then you're kind of in. Of course, you just don't throw this in every red deck.
The utility of Lizard is in that it's kind of a set and forget thing. Like it's a 2-drop that blocks well, that you throw down, and then it hinders your opponents, and you can focus on the other stuff. Whereas the Gleeful Arsonist is obviously a much more high maintenance card. You do feel like you need to buff its power, or else you're not going to be getting much value out of it at all. But yeah, they're both okay cards. Arsonist definitely has the nicer kind of.
I was just gonna say I like Magebane Lizard more because it's a lizard.
True.
So it wasn't really relevant.
That's fair. I don't have more thoughts.
Yusuf put a picture of JoJo on screen. Snail, you want to do your second one?
Sure. I like Ghost Vacuum. Why do I keep... Okay. I need to pull these cards up before I start talking.
I have tabs open for all mine.
I would never be prepared like that. Ghost Vacuum is a 1-mana artifact that taps to exile a card from a graveyard, and you can pay 6, tap, and sacrifice it to put each creature card exiled with Ghost Vacuum onto the battlefield under your control with a flying counter on it. Each one of them is a 1/1 spirit in addition to its other types. Activate only as a sorcery. So I've broadly been a big fan of pinpoint graveyard hate engines in the past little bit. I find that they're often even more meaningful than exile players' whole graveyard, just because they are just like a constant nagging pressure that nails the most impactful card in the graveyard turn after turn. So I'm a big fan of it on that count. And then the fact that this is a 1-mana version of that you can pay a bunch more mana to get this big swing of small copies of creatures that might have a bunch of good ETBs and stuff. I think it's just a great overall package.
Yeah, I love this card. Huge tragedy for Ghost Vacuum enjoyers. It's like $8 now almost, like $5 to $8 depending on where you buy it, because the new Ketramos from Aether Drift is really, really good with a Ghost Vacuum, and it is very strong in standard right now, and also doing work in modern too. So the price has jumped up a bit.
It's weird. Okay, I play a lot of graveyard decks, so I'm very used to getting grave hated.
Yeah.
In my Farrakha deck, where I don't really care about any card in particular in my graveyard, I feel like Ghost Vacuum sucks way less than like a Relic of Progenitus across the table, right? Something that my opponent can just kind of lord over me and be like, look, I can crack this at any time and your entire graveyard just goes away, right? Those kinds of effects are oppressive, even more so than like a Rest in Peace would be, because Rest in Peace I can just tutor for Haywire Might and blow it up. The relic will still get me on the way out, so to speak, right? So I don't know, it's tough because I do like Ghost Vacuum. However, I don't think it should be replacing just the exile whole yard kind of grave hate that people are running. Because there's some times where someone just gets graveyard value, a Muldrotha player, right? Where not one specific card in their graveyard really matters. It's just like their whole graveyard is value. And it doesn't, like, you want to get the whole thing as opposed to just one thing at a time.
The effect is instant speed, so you can nail it in response to somebody, trying to do something with the thing in their graveyard. graveyard, and you have that you have that to hold over them in some sense. Obviously, I think there are definitely still cases where it's not going to feel as meaningful as other things, but you can still kind of, hold it over people a bit.
Yeah, I like the mana sink later in the game. I mean, the card hits a lot of things. Flashback, it hits reanimation targets. Like no one can reanimate while the Ghost Vacuum's untapped. Like these are significant like lines of play. However, just like it doesn't counter the Grave Hand player. Like, oh, you exiled my one big bomb, I'll play my other big bomb instead, I guess.
Yeah, that's definitely true. There are cases where it won't be as good.
Con, what's your next card?
I wish I had bought a copy of Ghost Vacuum earlier before it spiked in price, because I wanted one for my Tawanos deck, and then I kind of put off buying it, and then it like quadrupled in price. And I know it's still like $5, but I don't want to spend $5 on it,
I feel like a super genius because I bought some Recruiter of the Guards and Felias while Recruiter of the Guard was still $4 and Felia was like $1.90. I bought those because I was like, oh man, I really like Recruiter of the Guard to get Felia, and then you flicker Recruiter of the Guard with Felia, and then that just became like a tier 1 modern deck.
Yeah, it actually started doing well, which is really fun.
Yeah.
Recruiter of the Guard is now $20 and Felia is now $9. So I feel like a super evil genius playing inside baseball.
Love to stonks a little.
Man, my best stonks is my friend and I, we bought Yixlid Jailers. Super jank card, like 2 mana creature cards in graveyards lose all abilities.
And then Hogak came out.
We bought a bunch of the promo ones. Oh my god. And then we sold all the promo ones for like $30-$35 each. The promo's down to 50 cents now. This is crazy.
I feel like there was a lot of stonks with Modern Horizon 3. There are a lot of like sleepers from that set. Emperor of Bones was a card that I immediately slammed in multiple decks when it was like $1.50, and now it's like $6.
The card's actually pretty good.
It's so good.
Well, it's $6 because of the Ketramos like splash damage.
Yeah.
Speaking of Ketramos, for my pre-release kit for Aether Drift, I pulled a foil Ketramos and a normal Ketramos, and then I sold them both for $50.
Oh my god, it's
nice.
that. Jesus.
Yes, Ketramos is really expensive right now.
Yeah,
the card's
Ketramos,
ridiculous.
It's insane. It's $50. Anyway, Con, what's your next card?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. The podcast we're doing. My next card is one that I have been playing recently and really enjoying. That is Bladegriff Prototype. This is 5 mana for a 3/2 Griffin with flying, and it has whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy target non-land permanent of that player's choice that one of your opponents controls. So your stuff never gets blown up. You hit a player, and then they get to blow up one of your other or any opponent's things of their choice. So right now I'm playing this in my Sig River Cutthroat deck. A Sig is a creature that wants an opponent to lose 3 or more life in a turn, and then you get to draw a card.
Aww. That's a really cute synergy. I really like that.
Exactly. So basically it's like a politics removal engine. So I play the Bladegriff, and then I go, hey, Snail, Elk's commander looks pretty scary. You don't mind taking 3 damage to blow it up, right? And then you go, okay, yeah. And then I hit you for 3 in the air, and then you blow up Elk's commander, and then I get to draw a card as well. And then next turn,
yeah, it's a 2 for 1.
There's something else scary. I could just ask and make another deal.
Yeah, you're using it in a much cuter way than I was using it when I had it in a deck. I had Delina Wildmage.
So you just make copies of
Yeah,
it?
you make like 4 copies of the thing, and then you hit an opponent for 12, and then they blow up 4 of your opponent's things, which is hilarious. Give a double strike, you get to blow up double Vindicate.
Yeah, this card's sweet. And one of the like key features of this is the fact that it destroys any permanent type, assuming you can politically leverage yourself into that. Meaning, like, if you're just in mono black, mono red, and you're like, ooh, I'm struggling against enchantments or whatever, this is like, there's a good chance that problematic enchantment is affecting other players. This is a way to get rid of it. It is a bit slow, but like, it is universal removal, essentially, outside of lands.
Okay, I was starting to diss this pre-pod, and I take that back. I think this thing's kind of fun.
Yes, I got him.
I am lucky. I would have also called this card pretty bad if I didn't already have experience with the card in Delina. I think Delina Calamity, the mono red saddle that makes like tacked and attacking copies of the thing.
Yeah.
Right. Like this has a lot of use cases. It's pretty funny. It's really funny when you give it Myriad with like Duke Older Raven Guard.
Oh, that's really funny. I love that.
Honestly, Snail, you should play it in your Brina deck.
It is political.
I've been ratcheting the mana curve of that deck down and down and down.
I know it's a 5-drop. That's the only, like, if it was 4 mana, this card would be like insane. At 5, it's like a little slow, but dude,
yeah,
it's
5 is supremely fair.
It's fair. Yeah.
My Brina deck is so it's sweaty. I'm trying to make it sweatier.
But no, here's the thing is, you don't have to use this politically because your opponent has to choose something.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not a May ability.
For sure, yeah.
So it is at at worst, it is you blow up one of your opponent's permanents at pseudo random, right? It's their worst one or whatever. But like, presumably they don't have bad cards in play, so it's like somewhat good.
For sure. Yeah, I'm sure. I should find an excuse to play that card because that is pretty funny.
Yeah.
All right. I have a bit of a 2-for-1 here. I have 2 colorless lands I want to talk about. I'll start with the less spicy one. It's Westvale Abbey. It's a land. It enters untapped. You can tap it to add a colorless. You can pay 5, pay 1 life, create a 1/1 white and black human cleric creature token. I've never used this ability on this card. 5 tap, sacrifice 5 creatures to transform this land, then untap it. It transforms into Ormondal. It's a 9/7 demon with flying, haste, lifelink, and intimidate, and indestructible. So you just get like
no intimidate.
No intimidate. Yeah, I'm thinking of Withengar, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it gets indestructible, flying, lifelink. Haste, which is absurd. I really like this card. I run it in Farrakha because Farrakha makes a lot of tokens. Seedborn Muse helps the mana out, and I can tutor for it off of White of the Reliquary. So White of the Reliquary can not only ramp in that deck, but also get me Westvale Abbey as like a from the mana base sort of win condition. A 9-point life swing is no joke. 9 lifelink haste is insanely oppressive. Like you cannot be out aggroed by any like moderate like board deck with a 9/7 lifelink or swinging.
It's just such a high cost to go into it, right? Though, like 5 mana and 6 mana effectively, and 5 creatures.
5 creatures is a lot, but we're playing commander and token players, man. Life finds a way. They make tokens up the ass.
That's true.
I like it as a finisher for like token decks, which is like a weird finisher because it's not an anthem, but it kind of, you turn your 5/1/1s to a huge 9/7 beater, so it's kind of like a finisher. And with indestructible, it's annoying to get rid of, so you can actually get some good damage off.
It's unintrusive too, because this is an untapped colorless land. If you're 2 or less colors, like that's fine. A utility land slot, it's pretty easy to run. It's the perfect storm for Farrakha, but honestly, I could see this in way more token decks than it currently is.
Yeah, you could play it in like Prosh if you just want another flying beater, or like, I don't know, Teysa Karlov probably makes enough tokens.
Teysa Karlov also gives the Ormondal vigilance and lifelink.
No, that's only tokens, right?
Oh, no, you're right. I'm stupid. It's not a token.
Nah, it's just a dude. Which actually we should specify, since Ormondal is black, so you can't play it in...
Yeah, no, this is not a mono white card.
Yeah.
You can't put this in mono green. It has to be in a black tokens deck.
Oh god.
But that being said, like Jaren, Corrupted Bishop, you make humans all day in that deck. Like black is no stranger to tokens. Zombie tokens, you can make tons of.
I'm fighting my demons not to turn this into a tangent about how color identity is garbage and should be abolished.
No.
I like color identity.
Wait, I like color identity too. All right, hang on. We'll put a pin in it.
Future podcast episode. Future podcast episode.
Yeah.
Cathedral of War is my second colorless land I wanted to talk about.
Yeah,
here.
this card sucks.
It's great. I don't know what you're talking about. It enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it to add colorless, and it has Exalted.
The tapped colorless land. Westvale Abbey enters untapped. It's so good.
Cathedral of War, I like it in any deck where you have a single creature going to extra combat hell. Like literally I'm swinging with this creature and it's going to be swinging like at least 2 or 3 times this turn. So what I think of is the easiest one to do it with is, why does her name escape me? Extra Combat Angel. I'm going insane. Aurelia the War Leader. Thank you. It's really great in Aurelia the War Leader because you guaranteed get +3/+3 from your mana base on Aurelia. That's counting the +1/+1 into the +2/+2. Ryu Storm's Edge uses this card really well because Ryu attacks alone. You get the extra combat, and then you get the extra combat mixed with Double Strike. That's +6/+6, right? Which is really not hard to get on Ryu at all. But otherwise, it's +3/+3 in that situation as well. Velomachus Lorehold is like the most broken card with this because you go with Cathedral of War, Velomachus, oops all combat spells, and his power grows and grows, and you can actually start him at 6 with Cathedral of War. So you can get the double extra combat spell full throttle from Aether Drift.
Oh, true, yeah.
Normally you would get 5 or less, but now you can get 6 or less with the Cathedral of War Exalted trigger for Velomachus. And then he just keeps growing and growing and growing. Oops all combat. Oops all extra combats, right? Like it has a home, and I don't see it ever, which is absurd because I think it's actually pretty decent.
I love that card. It's kind of a niche card, but in those niche situations,
it's pretty niche.
Kinda like it's good in Velomachus. Oops, all extra combat steps. Like I'm not gonna like argue that it's not. There's not many decks that are like that. Like it's fine if you want to play it in Skithrix, so you can get a +1/+1 from your mana base to infect someone faster, like go for it.
That's pretty decent, actually. I didn't even think about it. Skithrix.
It's fine, but like I don't know if it doesn't need to see that much more play. I do see that on EDH only 2% of Obeka decks are playing it, and that's probably too low. I know it's a 3-color deck, but free pumping of the commander is like pretty useful.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like I like Cathedral War a lot, actually. I specifically like it with extra combats when you're using those as kind of like a pseudo double strike sort of deal.
I also see 4% of Progenitus players are using it.
Progenitus?
That's bold. Oh no. I get it.
Yeah, so you can get the 2-shot, right?
Yeah, I mean,
With commander damage.
Oh, I guess so.
It's one of the few ways to pump it up.
It's
you
just,
can't target with a mutagenetic growth or nothing.
he costs Wooburg. You're going to put a colorless land in that deck?
They have a fancy mana base that can handle it.
There's not that many other ways to make it bigger.
Just play, like, at that point, honestly, I hate Cathedral War. Don't put it in Progenitus.
What? No, that's funny.
Play any other exalted creature.
That's funny. It lets your Progenitus 2-shot people.
Just run some Odyssey filters with it. You'll be fine.
Noble Hierarch, the Jund Hierarch. They're both better.
Just play all the tapped, like, 3-color lands. You will be fine.
Get out of here. My card is Detective's Phoenix. Detective's Phoenix is a 2 and a red for an enchantment creature Phoenix. You can bestow paying a red and collect evidence 6. So bestow is where you have it cast as an aura spell on a creature, and collecting evidence is where you exile a number of cards in your graveyard with total mana value equal to that number. So exile a bunch of cards with total mana value 6. The card itself has flying, haste. Enchanted creature has +2/+2 and flying and haste if it's an aura, and you can cast it from your graveyard using its bestow ability. This card, I think, is not played in that many decks. The reason for that is I think I got kind of overshadowed by Arena of Glory, which is another haste enabler, also for Modern Horizons 3, which is quite good.
That card's crazy.
Arena of Glory is great.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
This card, also great, because it also gives flying. If you have a deck that shoves cards into the graveyard, this is so easy to just get in there, get online, flying and haste, plus a pump. It's just great in like kind of an aggressive deck that's going to be discarding a bit and just wants a way to get in for damage faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Captain Howler, oh my god, this card owns, because you can go like Captain Howler, discard your like wheel, and then just like pump up like some stupid little guy, and then you Detective's Phoenix from the graveyard for 1 mana. That's a 4 mana total combo with Howler on board.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a flying haster that draws like 7 more cards for you and is like +1,000,000. Like that's just absurd. This being said, of course, yeah, like it's overshadowed by Arena of Glory for a reason. The hoop for Arena of Glory is you have mountains in your deck. Even then, honestly, you could probably get away with not having mountains in your deck and just having red. The hoop for this is you do have to be discarding or milling in some way. You need to be able to collect that evidence, because otherwise, like 2 mana or 3 mana 2/2 haste is not going to cut it. You always want to bestow this thing, which means you need to consistently, by I think about turn 4 or so, have 6 mana value worth of stuff in your graveyard to exile to it. And it's not hard to do that. I mean, you can do like Fire Ice, right? Like both sides of that card add up together to 4 in your graveyard, right? Like there's some cute ways you can get there, but you do need to be able to get there.
This card is pretty underplayed, honestly. Like, again, just looking at EDH Rec, Dogmeat, Ever Loyal, less than 2% of decks are playing this card. It's like literally perfect for that deck. You mill 5 when Dogmeat enters, and then it does stuff when you have equipped or enchanted creatures. It's like, this is exactly the card you want. This should be in like almost all of them, honestly. It's a pretty underplayed card. I like this card a lot. Do you run it in any decks right now?
Yeah, right in Malphagor. It's lovely there.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah.
Malphagor is hilarious with it, actually.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. Give Malphagor haste, get ready to 3-tap somebody. Yeah.
I have like an Asmo deck, that being Asmoran and Koldakar, however you say it, like permanently on the back burner until I have more ways to buy back the Underworld Cookbook or Rakdos gets more food. And I have it in there, and it's like, it's pretty good.
This is fair.
My last card is Shinen of Life's Roar. I don't really know how to pronounce that. It's green and 1 for a 1/2 spirit. It has all creatures able to block this creature do so, and channel 2 green. Discard this card. All creatures able to block target creature this turn do so. So this card is a lure effect on a dude, and it also can give that as a 1-time buff to any other creature. I played this, I had this weird jank Sultai channeling deck where I was trying to play like a bunch of channeling cards. And this was one of the cards that I played. And I got so much use out of it as a combat trick. You know, like Elk attacks Snail with a 5/5. That Snail intends to just not block and take the damage. And then, lure effect, now Snail has to block with everything and loses his commander. And that, like a surprise lure on an opponent's creature is weirdly powerful. Like, it ended up being a lot stronger than I expected. And then also, it's a way to get my stuff through, because I could play it, and then make my dude big or make a lot of guys, or in the deck, I would make tokens at instant speed. So I'd play it and then instant speed make all my zombies, attack, all my opponent's blockers have to block that, and then my tokens just got to swing in for free and I could get a bunch of damage in. Plays better than it reads.
I was about to ask like what the use case is over just like actual lure. And the instant speed combat trick nature of it is kind of cool. I do like that. It is also just 4 mana.
It is an expensive combat trick. Yes. Yes. But I played in a green deck that ramped a lot. So I had a lot of mana.
Any single way to use this card is not wildly strong, but I think it's just packing a lot of utility into it. Like there are several different ways you can use this card. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I like the modality of it just because you can do it on your opponent's creatures and stuff.
Yeah, which you can use politically.
Man, if Berserk wasn't like $1 billion, I really do like Berserk.
Berserk is funny.
Berserk is another combat trick you can use on your opponent's creatures for 1 green that turns blocks that look good into blocks that aren't good. And then also get some trample damage through and the creature still dies. Oh my god. I love Berserk. Anyway, yeah, but I've come around on this card. I thought it was pretty bad, but actually I think it might be pretty decent if you can spend 4 mana.
Yeah, the 4 mana is odd, but if you have such creatures, it's also super good if you're playing like Shelob, which gives all your spiders Death Touch. Shelob's an 8/8 with Death Touch. You can clear an entire opponent's board by giving it a lure effect and swing in with an 8/8 with Death Touch.
Do I put it in Farrakha with all my Death Touch snakes?
Oh, wait, you have a deck for it. Oh my god, and it's a creature that goes to the bin?
Yeah, it goes to the graveyard. It's a little funny. I might have to pick up a copy. My newest addition to Farrakha has been Grief.
Yeah, that card's...
my deck cannot beat Farewell, so I'm just going to do it to the control player. Just headshot them with the Grief. And then worst case scenario where I feel like there isn't a control player, I can like Grief goes to the bin after I evoke it, and then also I get to put an opponent's creature from their hand into their graveyard that I can turn into a snake later for some later political action. Grief's pretty cool, not gonna lie. Yeah, I'll try it out and report back.
Okay, all right. We'll hear that in an updated podcast episode. Was that all of ours that we had, right?
Yep, I think so.
Yep, we each had 3 except for me. I cheated. I had 4.
You did.
Right. You're a dirty cheater. Do we want to skip any of the game changer bracket talk and just go to other questions?
I could go either way. I don't.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I don't know. I don't feel that strongly.
If I find a particular interesting one, I'll find it. Whoops. I'm polluted by comments about Panoptic Mirror.
Yeah, I interaction baited. I'm sorry.
It's okay. This is a terrible question. Am I a boomer if I play Torrential Gearhulk in EDH? That card is...
Torrential Gearhulk? That card's ancient.
Still relatively new.
Like 2016? 2017, I'm going to say.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, that's like 8 years old.
Yeah, no, you started playing, more recently than that, so it probably feels old to you.
That card's ancient.
I was playing the game for like 5 years before that card came out, so it feels like middling levels of old.
Okay, moving on to the Beseech the Mirror section. This is where you can ask us questions. You just have to type mirror to have us more easily find your question. You can also tweet at us or blue sky us, links in the descriptions. And when the Spotify creator platform website decides to work, I will try to get questions from there as well. So on Spotify, you can ask your questions. Most of the time, I can't read them, but I'll try. I hate Spotify.
I don't know what the issue with Spotify is, but my immediate assumption was that Spotify users just don't know how to type words. And so you're just looking at a string of gibberish going, God damn it, Spotify people.
No, it's like their website's just unbelievably useless.
Oh, okay. That does make sense.
Yeah. No, it'll just be like, comments aren't available in your region. I was like, America? Why would comments not be allowed in this region? You know what? I'm going to grab a question from Spotify because it is working right now. Andrew asks, Mirror, how do you decide when one of your decks is too unfun to play against or needs to be scrapped?
Guilt. Guilt's a big one. If I play a deck and it consistently makes my opponent's life leave their eyes, like I see the spark just go, I'm like, maybe this one isn't it. That was the case for Kelsey and the Plague. If Kelsey and the Plague worked, no one got to have a creature for the rest of the game, and then everyone died one after the other. It was pretty miserable to play against. Any sort of like board hate kind of deck like that, like for me, has like not lived very long.
This is why I gotta be your meta. I remember a Kelsian deck at my local game store. They never beat me. I don't play creatures, so they just cleared the board for me, and then I beat them. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, it's kind of similar for me. I frequently do play decks that are a little bit on that line, and I try to be really nice with my table engagement when I'm playing that sort of deck. And if people still end up seeming kind of miserable after that, then that's usually a good indicator that there is a problem.
For me, I rarely have like people get like mad at me or upset or anything. I think maybe my decks are a little strange and disjointed, so I don't run into too many issues like that. So I feel like the decks become too unfun when I feel like the wins are really unsatisfying. Like I'm beating my opponent and they don't have like a real response to it. And it's not because like, oh, they just forgot to put Doomblade in their deck, but like their deck is just unable to like get around this. My example would be my stupid Mr. Foxglove. Yeah, that guy. Man, that deck was so lame. It's just, you just cheat like big monsters into play. And I would play cards like Tempt with Discovery, and it felt so bad because people would be like, yeah, I want to land. And then they would lose to like my 8-drop the next turn. And then I just felt like I was like, it's just like bullying players who didn't know how good Tempt with Discovery was. And I had to delete the deck.
Tempt with Discovery.
I feel like it's just like when the games feel unsatisfying is when I scrap a deck.
Tempt with Discovery is such a good card. You can choose to not do anything, or you can choose to get a land from your deck and lose the game.
Yeah. It's pretty great.
Yo, I love hitting the land plus lose button. Hitting that button every time.
And it's not even like, I'm not even getting like Field of the Dead or like Ancient Tomb. I don't even have an Ancient Tomb. Like, I was getting like basics, and it was just, I'm playing 8-drops when they're all playing like 4-drops, and I'm just so far ahead. There were multiple people who asked about your thoughts on budget restrictions for decks. Do you play budget decks? What is your budget for a deck? Quote unquote.
For me personally, I do technically play budget decks, as in I'm not like no budget restriction building. I will only build decks that I feel comfortable buying. I only do deck techs on my video deck techs on decks that I actually own in paper. For me, my budget is just how comfortable I am spending the money on the deck. That typically ranges from $100 to $300 based on how much I like it and how many of the cards I already own. For me, it's in that range. I don't be like, oh, I'm gonna try and build a $20 deck. It's like, okay, let's try to keep this deck $100. If I happen to get to 200 because I wanted some other cards in there, so be it. And if I like the deck enough, then I'll buy it. That's sort of like my building philosophy. I'm not like, ooh, I'm gonna try and reach this like $50 budget deck or something.
So I definitely am more of a budget deck builder. My decks typically range between $50 and $200. More often when I first build a deck, it'll be in the $50 to $100 range, and sometimes even cheaper. If I have an idea that I think is good and I can tell I'm going to like the deck, I'm willing to put a little bit more money into it. But if I have an idea I'm really not sure about, a lot of times what I'll do is I will make a like $50 version of that deck, and I'll order that, and I will see if it's fun. And if it is fun, then awesome. And if it's not all that fun, then that's fine. I spent $50 on it. Who cares? So I definitely like the sort of freeing sense I get when I build a budget deck and am able to try it out and am able to, not feel like I wasted my money on something I'm not enjoying.
I feel like budget deck building, by the way, is like a really good jumping off point, because you can build some pretty strong budget decks that are very consistent, and then you can slowly upgrade them over time. As in, like, you can spend $10 and $15 here and there to buy some upgrades for the deck as you keep playing it and keep enjoying it. And then eventually you end up, this is how most of my decks end up in like the $300 to $500 range. Like Kura's 500, Farrakha's closer to like 3-4. Those decks started at 150 or so, and I just kept upgrading them over time when I just had the money and will to.
That's pretty much what's happened with my more expensive decks. They all started at like 100, and they've gradually kind of crept up.
I feel like I do something that is probably completely insane. So I almost exclusively, when I like purchase cards, is like buy singles. I could probably count the number of sealed product I've bought from when I started playing in 7th grade to finishing my masters on one hand, maybe two.
This guy doesn't play limited.
No, I don't. But during that time, I've done 2 sealed ones. After, when I finished my like degree and I got my corporate finance job that paid like they paid me way too much money for what the shit I did. When I had my big time corporate finance job, I actually spent money on like sealed product. But before that, I really didn't. And I also am hard capping myself at the 6 decks that I have. So when I take apart a deck, I literally take everything out of it that is sellable. Like the store will take it for like 10 cents, 25 cents. And I scrap everything. I sell the entire list completely. And then I'll put like 20, 30 bucks into plus the store credit or whatever to buying whatever the new deck is. And if I keep it, I'll upgrade it here and there. And that's basically what I've done for forever. So for me, the budget is just like, I don't know, whatever the pile of singles I have is worth at the time. And it's just gone up over time as I've collected more singles that don't get scrapped every time I sell a deck. So I don't know. It's just cards I own.
I've been starting to do higher budget decks because I started buying and selling more cards on a platform I may or may not accept a sponsorship from at some point, but that's besides the point. Definitely, when I started selling cards, I started getting a lot more okay with making more expensive purchases for decks. Because if I'm just kind of hoarding all my cards like a little dragon, like if I just have like a massive pile of expensive cardboard sitting around not in a deck, it feels kind of bad to buy an expensive card. But if I'm buying an expensive card with the proceeds of selling some of my dragon hoard, well, hey, that's justifiable.
Yeah, it's a little scuffed because my platform does actually like enable me now to buy more expensive decks that I would have been comfortable before I did YouTube. Just because like I have a direct vector to like over 1,000 people who I can sell cards to. Like I've been selling cards to people who watch my videos and stuff, or people who are interested or whatever, whenever I have like a surplus of cardboard that I don't need anymore. By the way, signing cards feels so weird. I hate it. Like just putting a Sharpie on a card does not feel right.
Yeah, that's why I only send out signed like crappy baubles. They're not like good cards. But yeah, buy singles. I highly recommend.
Sure.
I'm not even, Yusuf, don't put my promo code or anything on screen now. I don't want people to think that this is like a monetary incentive for me. You should just be buying singles. If you're the person who's like, oh, I wish I had a crazy mana base, but you're going to buy the next like Final Fantasy box, don't buy the box. Just buy like a bunch of good lands and then have a good mana base forever.
Yeah, honestly, by the way, like limited's a good way to build a collection.
No.
If you're like halfway good at limited, it's really good because you'll often make your entry back if you can 2-1 or 3-0 like pretty competently.
That's what I did with Modern. So because I went to school in Seattle and my locals was just Card Kingdom. They had a really expensive FNM. Like I think it was like $25 or like $30 to like enter their weekly FNM, which you could use store credit to pay for. But if you went 3-1, you got like $60 store credit. And if you went 4-0, you got 120, and then you got nothing for anything else. And then like every week my friends and I would just go, and then you'd go like 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, and you could use the store credit to pay for it. And I just grinded Modern for like 4 years, which you can't do sadly anymore because Modern's like, mostly dead everywhere. Very tragic.
I think I've only played Magic at Card Kingdom once, and it's a sweaty vibe there.
For Modern?
I went to a standard tournament.
Oh, okay.
It definitely felt very different than the other standard tournaments I'd been to.
Yeah, they're pretty serious players there for Modern. It's really funny because the Magic scene there is like very, very grindy, very sweaty, very boomer tournament grinders. But ironically, the 40K scene there is ultra casual. They have like, my friend went there once and he won like a nice player award and they gave him just like $25 store credit because everybody liked him.
A nice player award. Why don't I get those?
I don't know. The 40K scene there is like really chill. I'm not sponsored by them, by the way. This is just, I went there a lot. That was fun. Should we do another question?
I got it in me to do one more.
Sure, let's do it.
ArkRoy7 asks, Mirror, mirror, I've come to bargain with a goat token. For everyone, what is your least liked creature type and why? Deer.
Avatar.
Dragons.